I dare you to find a person more powerful than me, Jordan Roberts said, smirking as he looked down at Amelia. But Amelia didn't flinch. Instead, she straightened her back and met his gaze. For a moment, the room felt frozen, as if time had stopped. She was just a maid, after all, but today, she was going to show them all what true power looked like. Amelia Williams had never been one to back down from a challenge, not even when it came from the man who owned half the city. She had spent the last year cleaning the massive mansion, her every day filled with the routine of mopping floors, scrubbing windows, and ensuring the house was spotless. Yet, behind her quiet demeanor, Amelia was more than just a maid. She was sharp, capable, and had been silently observing everything around her. That afternoon, as she worked near the boardroom, a conversation she wasn't supposed to hear caught her attention. Jordan Roberts, the billionaire businessman, was discussing a deal so complicated it made her head spin. She wasn't supposed to understand the intricacies of such contracts, but Amelia had spent years studying finance in her spare time, fascinated by the way numbers could shape the world. She had a knack for it, and as she overheard snippets of their discussion, something clicked in her mind, a small but crucial mistake in the contract. Without thinking, Amelia walked into the room, her heart pounding in her chest. The executives inside barely acknowledged her presence, continuing to talk as though she was invisible. Jordan Roberts, on the other hand, shot her a look of disdain. "What do you want, Amelia?" he asked, his tone condescending. "This isn't your place." Amelia stood her ground, not fazed by his cold demeanor. She had seen enough to know that if the deal went through as planned, it would ruin Roberts' company. She opened her mouth, her voice calm yet firm. "You're missing a clause," she said, her words slicing through the tension in the room. The silence that followed was deafening. No one moved, no one spoke. The boardroom was frozen in shock. Jordan raised an eyebrow, incredulous that a maid, someone who he had barely noticed before, was daring to question him. "What are you talking about?" he asked, though his voice lacked the confidence it once held. "There's a risk in this contract you haven't accounted for," Amelia continued, pointing at a clause on the screen. "If you sign this, you're exposing yourself to liability in a way you can't undo." Roberts scoffed, but the flicker of doubt in his eyes didn't go unnoticed by the others in the room. "I'm sure you don't understand these things," he said, dismissing her with a wave. "But you're wrong." "Am I?" Amelia said softly, her gaze unwavering. "You should have someone double-check this. I've worked with legal contracts before." Jordan Roberts looked at her, and for the first time, he saw her not as the maid, but as someone who had the potential to change everything. The room was still, the executives unsure of what to make of the situation. Amelia didn't care about the power plays, the wealth, or the status. She had a job to do, and if she could save Roberts from making a disastrous mistake, she would do it. As the room slowly came back to life, Jordan Roberts stood still for a moment longer, his pen hovering over the document. Finally, with a deep sigh, he lowered it. "Show me." Amelia stood in front of the large conference table, her fingers lightly tracing the contract that Jordan Roberts had been ready to sign just moments ago. The room, once filled with a hushed tension, now seemed charged with uncertainty. The other executives, still reeling from her interruption, exchanged glances, unsure whether to dismiss her or acknowledge her presence. Jordan, however, seemed different now. He no longer looked at her with disdain, but with a wary curiosity, as if he were seeing her for the first time. "Show me," he had said, his voice quieter than before, almost reluctant. Amelia took a deep breath and stepped forward, pointing to the specific clause she had identified earlier. Her mind raced as she prepared to explain the intricacies of the legal jargon she had studied so many times before. She was no lawyer, but over the years, she had picked up enough to understand how contracts worked, especially in a corporate setting. As her finger traced the words on the paper, the weight of the situation dawned on her. This wasn't just about a single mistake in a contract. This was about saving an entire company from disaster. "If this clause is left as it is," she began, her voice steady but filled with authority, "the company will be liable for losses that it cannot recover from. The merger, if it goes through as planned, will expose you to lawsuits and potentially ruin your reputation. You need to fix this before it's too late." The room was silent, all eyes now on Jordan. For a moment, it seemed as though he might dismiss her once more, but something in his posture had shifted. He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing as he read the clause. The tension in the room grew as the other executives, still unsure of what was happening, waited for his reaction. "You're sure about this?" Jordan asked, his voice now devoid of the arrogance that had once defined it. Amelia nodded. "I've been working with contracts for years. I know how to spot risks like this." The billionaire's eyes flickered with something close to admiration, though he quickly masked it with a cold expression. "What do you propose we do about it?" he asked. Amelia didn't hesitate. "You need to renegotiate the terms of the merger. This clause needs to be rewritten to protect both parties, not just one. And you need a legal team to go over the entire contract with a fine-tooth comb." Jordan leaned back in his chair, his fingers tapping the table thoughtfully. The others in the room remained still, watching intently. Amelia could feel the weight of their gazes on her, but she remained calm. This was her moment, the moment she had worked so hard for. Jordan finally looked up at her, his expression unreadable. "You're certain this will work?" he asked again. "I am," Amelia replied, her voice firm. There was a long pause as Jordan considered her words. Amelia could see the wheels turning in his mind, the realization settling in. He had underestimated her, and now he was faced with the undeniable truth. Amelia Williams, the maid, knew more about this contract than he did. The billionaire's demeanor shifted once again, this time with a hint of respect. He didn't say anything for a moment, but the silence was telling. Finally, he stood up, the decision made. "All right," he said, turning to the other executives. "We're going to follow Amelia's advice. We'll take another look at the contract and renegotiate." The room was still, the air heavy with the weight of the decision. Amelia felt a wave of relief wash over her. Though she remained composed, she had done it. She had saved the company. As the executives began to discuss the next steps, Jordan turned to her once more. "Amelia," he said, his voice softer now, "I owe you an apology. I didn't see it before, but you're more than just a maid. You're something else." Amelia simply nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. She had known all along that she had the potential to make a difference. It wasn't about the title or the job she held. It was about the knowledge, the skills, and the determination to do what was right. And today, she had proven that even the most overlooked person could change the course of an entire company's future. The following days at the Roberts estate felt different. Amelia couldn't put her finger on it, but there was a shift in the air, a subtle change in how the people around her treated her. It was as if the walls themselves had started to acknowledge her, something that had never happened before. The other staff members who once barely acknowledged her presence now nodded respectfully when she passed by. Even the housekeeper, who used to give her side glances, had begun offering a smile as Amelia made her rounds. It wasn't just the respect she had earned from them, though. It was from Jordan Roberts, the man who had once dismissed her, who had seen her as nothing more than a maid. Now, every time their paths crossed, he greeted her with a new sense of recognition. "Amelia," he would say, his voice warmer than before. "Thank you again for saving the company." Amelia simply nodded, her thoughts always focused on the task at hand. But deep down, a quiet pride swelled within her. She hadn't just changed the course of a business deal. She had proven that she wasn't defined by her title, by the uniform she wore, or by the expectations others had of her. One afternoon, as Amelia was dusting the library shelves, Jordan Roberts approached her again. This time, he wasn't alone. A group of executives from his company stood nearby, their eyes subtly trained on her. "Amelia," Jordan called out, and she turned, surprised to see him with a few unfamiliar faces. "I wanted to introduce you to my legal team," he said, gesturing toward the group. "They've been reviewing the contract you pointed out, and we've decided to bring you in for a more official consultation." Amelia's heart skipped a beat. She had never imagined that something as simple as pointing out a flaw in a document would lead to this. She had known her skills were sharp, but to be recognized by a man like Jordan Roberts, by people in power, was still overwhelming. She hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to say. But Jordan continued before she could respond. "You were right, Amelia," he said, his voice soft but sincere. "You saved us from a disaster, and I think it's time we acknowledge that. You have a sharp mind, and I want you to be a part of the team moving forward." The words hung in the air, and Amelia could hardly believe what she was hearing. She had come into this job as a maid, someone who was seen and not heard, someone who was overlooked and dismissed. Now, here she was, being offered a place in the company that had once treated her as invisible. She felt a mixture of disbelief and gratitude. "Thank you, Mr. Roberts," she said quietly, still processing the moment. The legal team members nodded at her, their expressions a mix of surprise and respect. As the meeting wrapped up, Jordan walked with her down the long hallway toward the staff quarters. "I'm glad you're taking this opportunity, Amelia," he said, his tone thoughtful. "You deserve it." Amelia smiled, her heart full. She had worked so hard, not for recognition, but simply to do her best. And now, the world was starting to see her for what she truly was, more than just a maid. She was a force to be reckoned with. The rest of the day passed in a blur as Amelia went about her duties, but something inside her had shifted. For the first time in her life, she felt seen, truly seen, for who she was. It wasn't just about the job anymore. It was about her future, her potential, and the endless possibilities that lay ahead. As the sun set and she finished her work for the day, Amelia stood outside the mansion, looking up at the towering walls that had once felt so cold and intimidating. Now, they seemed different. They were no longer barriers. They were a reminder of how far she had come, and how much farther she still had to go. Amelia walked into the office the next day, her heart still racing from the previous evening. The offer from Jordan Roberts had been nothing short of unexpected, and as she sat at the polished conference table, she couldn't help but feel out of place. She had worked her whole life to be overlooked, to blend into the background, but now, she was part of the team. The legal team, to be specific. She had been asked to consult on a major contract, a task she never imagined she would be trusted with. As the morning sun filtered through the tall windows, casting a warm glow over the room, Amelia took a deep breath and straightened her posture. The door opened, and in walked the familiar faces of the legal team, followed by Jordan himself. "Amelia," Jordan greeted her with a smile. "Glad to see you're here. Ready to get started?" Amelia nodded, trying to mask the nervous excitement bubbling inside her. This was her moment to prove that she belonged here, in this room, at this table. As the team sat down and began discussing the finer details of the contract, Amelia listened carefully. They spoke in a language she had come to understand, a language of clauses, terms, and risks, but this time, it was different. She was part of the conversation. When the team hit a snag on a particular section of the contract, Jordan looked at her expectantly. "Amelia, you mentioned something about this in your previous review," he said. "What do you think?" She felt the weight of the room's attention shift to her. This wasn't the moment to hesitate or second-guess herself. She had already earned their respect by pointing out the initial mistake in the contract. Now, it was time to show them that she wasn't just lucky, that her knowledge and insight were invaluable. Amelia stood and walked over to the projected screen, pointing at the section that had caused the confusion. "This clause is too vague," she began, her voice steady. "It opens up too many loopholes. We need to tighten the language here to avoid any misinterpretation. If we leave it like this, we'll be exposed to legal battles down the line." The legal team exchanged looks, impressed by her clarity and confidence. Jordan watched her closely, his expression unreadable. He hadn't expected this from someone he once considered just a maid. But Amelia wasn't just any maid. She was a woman who had worked tirelessly, who had taught herself everything she knew, and who was now using that knowledge to change the course of this company's future. As the discussion continued, Amelia's contributions became more frequent, and with each suggestion, she felt herself growing more comfortable in her new role. This was what she had always dreamed of, being recognized for her abilities, not just her appearance or the job she held. The meeting ended after a few hours, and Jordan turned to Amelia with a genuine smile. "You did great today," he said. "I'm impressed." Amelia smiled back, her heart swelling with pride. "Thank you, Mr. Roberts," she replied, though the words didn't fully capture the depth of her gratitude. She had earned her place here, and this was just the beginning. As she left the conference room, she couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in her life, Amelia felt like she was in control of her own destiny. The mansion, once a place where she felt invisible, now seemed like a symbol of her success. She had proven that she wasn't just a maid. She was a force to be reckoned with. And she was only just getting started. The following weeks felt like a dream for Amelia. The mansion, Once a place where she had felt invisible, now felt like a home where her presence mattered. She had gone from being the woman who cleaned the floors to the one who helped steer the future of a multi-million-dollar company. Jordan Roberts, though always busy with his own affairs, had made it clear that Amelia's input was no longer something to be dismissed. He often called her into meetings, even when the discussions were about matters outside of her initial responsibilities. Each time, she proved herself. She wasn't just the maid who had caught a mistake in a contract. She was a strategic thinker, someone whose advice was valued. One afternoon, as she was reviewing some financial documents in her office, an office she had earned and now called her own, Jordan knocked on the door. "Amelia, got a minute?" he asked, his voice casual, but with the familiar respect that had become a constant. She stood up, surprised to see him. "Of course, come in," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her. Jordan stepped inside, taking a seat as she returned to her desk. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I'm thinking about restructuring some of the leadership roles in the company," he began. "We need someone who can handle not just the legal side of things, but also the finances. Someone who can bridge the gap between the departments." Amelia's heart skipped a beat. She had always dreamed of a role like that, but never in her wildest imagination did she think it would come so soon. "I want you to take on a more prominent role," Jordan continued, his eyes steady on hers. "I believe you have what it takes to lead, not just as a consultant, but as a key player in this company." Amelia's mind raced, but she kept her composure. She had worked hard for this moment, and she wasn't about to let doubt creep in. "I'm honored," she said softly, her voice filled with sincerity. "But I'm not sure if I'm the best fit for such a position." Jordan leaned forward, his gaze unwavering. "You already are," he replied. "You've proven yourself more than capable. And now it's time for you to step into a bigger role. You've earned it." Amelia sat back in her chair, absorbing his words. The weight of the decision wasn't lost on her. This wasn't just about a promotion. It was about changing the course of her life. She had always been a fighter, someone who had worked tirelessly to get ahead, to show the world that she was more than just her circumstances. But now, with this opportunity, she could prove it on a whole new level. "Thank you, Mr. Roberts," she said, her voice steady but filled with gratitude. "I won't let you down." Jordan smiled, a rare genuine smile that reached his eyes. "I know you won't," he said, standing up. "I'll have the paperwork drawn up. You'll officially be the head of our financial operations and strategy." As he left her office, Amelia sat quietly, her thoughts swirling. This was the moment she had been working toward her entire life. She had come from nothing, and now she was in a position where she could change not just her own future, but the future of the company she had once served as an invisible maid. The world had finally started to see her for who she truly was, a force of nature. The next day, as the news of her promotion spread throughout the company, Amelia felt a strange mix of pride and disbelief. She was no longer the background character in her own life. She was the one leading the charge, making decisions that would shape the future. And she had earned every single bit of it. As she walked down the halls of the mansion, now her workplace in a whole new way, she couldn't help but smile. This was just the beginning. Amelia sat in her new office, looking out over the sprawling grounds of the Roberts estate. It was surreal to think that just a few months ago, she had been cleaning these same floors, invisible to the world around her. Now, she was at the helm of the company's financial strategy, a role she had never dreamed of. She had worked tirelessly for this moment, and now that it had arrived, it felt both exhilarating and overwhelming. The phone on her desk buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. It was Jordan Roberts, the man who had given her this opportunity. "Amelia, I need you in the conference room," he said, his voice steady as always. "We've got some updates on the merger that I want you to review." She quickly gathered her notes, her mind focused on the task ahead. She had learned quickly that the world of business was fast-paced, and it demanded constant attention. As she walked down the long hallway toward the conference room, she reflected on the changes that had come with her promotion. No longer did people look at her with skepticism or dismiss her ideas. Now, they listened. They respected her. When she entered the conference room, Jordan and the rest of the senior team were already gathered around the table, reviewing the latest reports. Amelia took her seat at the head of the table, a spot that felt both natural and foreign. "All right, everyone," Jordan said, nodding toward her. "Amelia's going to take the lead on this. We need to finalize the numbers before the meeting with the investors tomorrow. Amelia looked over the financial projections, her mind working through the figures with precision. She had always had an eye for detail, and now she was using that skill to shape the future of a billion-dollar company. As she began outlining her strategy, the team's focus shifted entirely to her. She spoke with confidence, detailing the necessary adjustments to the budget, suggesting cost-cutting measures, and proposing new investment strategies. The more she spoke, the more the team began to nod in agreement, impressed by her insight. Jordan, who had once doubted her abilities, sat back in his chair, a look of admiration on his face. He had known from the moment she had pointed out the flaws in the contract that Amelia was special, but now, seeing her in action, he realized just how much he had underestimated her. The meeting went on for several hours, but by the end, the team had a clear plan moving forward. Amelia had proven herself once again, not just as a consultant, but as a leader. As the team filed out of the room, Jordan stayed behind, walking over to where Amelia was organizing her papers. "You did great today," he said, his voice low. "You've got an incredible mind, Amelia. I'm glad we brought you on board." Amelia looked up at him, a small smile playing on her lips. "Thank you, Mr. Roberts. I'm just getting started." The words felt true. She had only just begun to show what she was capable of, and she knew that this was only the beginning of her journey. As she left the conference room, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. She had come so far, from the maid no one noticed to the financial strategist leading a major company. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in her life, Amelia felt confident that she was exactly where she needed to be. Amelia sat in her office, staring out the window at the sprawling estate, her mind racing with the events of the past few months. She had come a long way from the quiet maid cleaning the floors of the Roberts mansion. Now, she was an integral part of the team, making decisions that could change the future of the company. The world that had once felt so out of reach was now her reality. Yet, despite all the success, a part of her still struggled to fully accept the transformation. It was hard to believe that just a short time ago, she had been invisible, unnoticed, and now she was in charge of multi-million-dollar deals. The knock on the door brought her back to the present. "Come in," she called, straightening in her chair. The door opened, and Jordan Roberts stepped inside, his usual confident demeanor softened by something else, respect, perhaps, or a quiet acknowledgement of everything she had achieved. "How's everything going?" he asked, taking a seat across from her. "Good," she replied, her voice steady. "We're on track for the investor meeting next week. I've made some adjustments to the budget projections, and the team is ready to present." Jordan nodded, a thoughtful look crossing his face. "I'm glad to hear that. You've been doing great work, Amelia. I've been hearing nothing but praise from the team." Amelia smiled, though it was brief. She appreciated the acknowledgement, but she had never done this for the praise. It was about proving something to herself, showing that she could rise above her circumstances. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I'm just doing my job." Jordan leaned forward, his eyes meeting hers with a new sense of seriousness. "Amelia, I want you to know that I've been thinking a lot about your future here at the company." Her heart skipped a beat. She had always known that Jordan saw her potential, but she wasn't sure what he meant by future. She had already been promoted, but this felt like something more. "I want you to take over as Chief Financial Officer," he said, his words hitting her like a wave. "You've shown incredible leadership, and I believe you're ready for this role. You've proven yourself, not just to me, but to the entire company." The room seemed to pause as the words sank in. Amelia couldn't believe what she was hearing. The role of Chief Financial Officer was a major step up, a position she never thought would be within her reach. She had worked so hard, for so long, always pushing forward, but this was the culmination of everything she had fought for. "I'm honored," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "But are you sure? I mean, this is a big responsibility." Jordan smiled, his confidence in her unwavering. "I'm absolutely sure. I've seen the work you've done, the way you think. You're more than ready." Amelia took a deep breath, feeling a mixture of pride and disbelief. She had gone from cleaning floors to being offered one of the highest positions in the company. It felt surreal, but at the same time, it was everything she had worked for. "Thank you," she said, her heart swelling with gratitude. "I won't let you down." As Jordan left her office, Amelia sat back in her chair, the weight of the decision settling in. She had come so far, and now, her journey was just beginning. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in her life, she knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. This wasn't just a job anymore. This was her life's work. She had earned her place at the table, and no one could take that away from her. Amelia stood in front of the large glass windows in her office, looking out at the city below. The view was breathtaking, but it was nothing compared to the feeling of accomplishment that filled her heart. She had worked so hard to get here, and now, she was truly living her dream. As Chief Financial Officer of the Roberts Corporation, Amelia had proven that her past did not define her. She had climbed her way to the top, and now, the world was at her feet. It wasn't just about the money or the title anymore. It was about the impact she had made, the lives she had changed, and the person she had become. As she turned to her desk, her phone buzzed with a notification. It was a message from Jordan Roberts. "Amelia, I need to talk to you about the upcoming merger. Can you meet me in the boardroom?" She felt a slight pang of nervousness in her chest. Jordan had been nothing but supportive, but she still wasn't used to the idea that she was now his equal, not just his employee. She quickly gathered her notes and headed toward the boardroom, her mind racing with possibilities. When she entered the room, Jordan was already there, standing by the table with a serious look on his face. "I've been thinking a lot about the future of this company," he said, his voice low. "We've made great progress, but there are still challenges ahead." Amelia nodded, waiting for him to continue. Jordan had always been a visionary, and she trusted his instincts. "I want to expand our reach internationally," he continued. "But to do that, we need someone with experience in global finance. Someone who understands the complexities of international markets." Amelia felt a wave of excitement wash over her. She had always dreamed of working on a global scale, of taking the company beyond its borders. "I think you're the right person for the job," Jordan said, his eyes meeting hers. "I want you to lead our international expansion efforts." Amelia's heart skipped a beat. This was the opportunity she had been waiting for. Not only had she earned a seat at the table, but now, she was being entrusted with one of the most important roles in the company. She felt a surge of pride and determination. "I won't let you down," she said, her voice steady with confidence. Jordan smiled, his expression softening. "I know you won't." As she left the boardroom, Amelia couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude. She had come so far, and now, she was on the brink of something even greater. The future was wide open, and she was ready to take on whatever came next. She had always believed in herself, but now, the world was beginning to believe in her too. This was her time, and nothing was going to stand in her way. Amelia sat at her new desk, her fingers tracing the edge of the papers in front of her. The office was filled with the soft hum of activity as the team worked on finalizing the international expansion plan. The weight of the responsibility was something she had never experienced before, but it felt right. This was what she had been working toward her entire life. As she looked out the window at the city below, she couldn't help but think back to the moment she had stepped into this world. Just a year ago, she had been cleaning the very floors that now seemed to be her domain. But now, she was leading the charge into new markets, pushing the company toward global success. She remembered the doubts she had once felt, the moments of uncertainty when she wondered if she was truly capable of this kind of success. But now, those doubts seemed so far away. She had proven herself, not just to the world, but to herself. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called, straightening in her chair. The door opened, and Jordan Roberts stepped. Inside, a warm smile on his face. "Amelia, I just wanted to check in," he said, taking a seat across from her. "How's everything going with the expansion project?" Amelia smiled, feeling a surge of pride. "Everything's on track," she replied. "The financial forecasts are looking good, and the team is ready to move forward with the first phase. We'll be meeting with potential partners next week." Jordan nodded, clearly impressed. "You're doing great work," he said. "I knew I made the right decision putting you in charge." Amelia felt her chest swell with gratitude. This was the moment she had been waiting for. She had worked hard for this recognition, and now, it felt like everything was falling into place. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady. "I won't let you down." Jordan's smile widened. "I know you won't." As he stood up to leave, Amelia felt a deep sense of satisfaction. She had come so far, and now, the world was hers to conquer. The company was about to embark on a new chapter, and Amelia was going to be the one to lead them there. The weight of her new role was still there, but it was a weight she was ready to carry. She had earned it. The future was bright, and nothing could stop her now. She had proven that anything was possible if you worked hard enough, believed in yourself, and never gave up. As she turned back to the papers on her desk, Amelia knew that this was just the beginning of something much bigger. The road ahead was long, but she was ready for whatever came next.